3 months ago, I was completely convinced my girlfriend was cheating on me. Looking back now, I almost wish I had been right. A cheating partner is painful, but at least it's something you can understand. What I eventually discovered was something I never could have imagined, and even now, I still wake up some nights wondering how close I came to destroying the best thing that had ever happened to me. My name is Ryan. I'm 29 years old, and I live in Chicago. I work as an electrical engineer for a construction company, and for the last 4 years, my life had been simple, predictable, and honestly, perfect. Every morning I woke up at 6:30, grabbed a coffee from the cafe across the street, spent the day solving problems on construction sites, and drove home through heavy traffic, knowing Emma would already be there. She was usually cooking dinner, while our golden retriever, Max, ran circles around the apartment the moment he heard my keys at the front door. Emma wasn't just my girlfriend. She was my best friend. We had met during our sophomore year of college. After accidentally signing up for the same volunteer project, she laughed at one of my terrible jokes, and somehow we never stopped talking after that. We survived long distance for almost a year after graduation, before finally moving into our own apartment in downtown Chicago. We talked about getting married almost every week. Sometimes we'd argue over baby names, just for fun. Other nights we'd sit on the couch, scrolling through houses we couldn't afford yet, pretending we'd buy one someday. Life wasn't exciting. It wasn't dramatic. It was peaceful, and I loved every second of it. Everything changed on a rainy Monday evening. Around 5 o'clock, my phone buzzed. It was Emma, running a little late, emergency at work. Love you. She worked as a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital, so nothing about the message seemed unusual. Emergencies happened all the time. I ordered takeout instead of cooking, and waited for her to get home. 9 o'clock came before I finally heard the apartment door unlock. She walked inside wearing her navy blue scrubs, her hair tied into a messy bun, and dark circles under her eyes. She looked exhausted. Not the kind of tired you get after working a long shift. She looked emotionally drained. She barely smiled when she saw me. She gave Max a quick pat on the head, kissed me on the cheek, apologized for being late, and disappeared into the shower. Later that night, she fell asleep on the couch before we even finished watching our movie. I remember standing there, looking at her sleeping peacefully, and feeling like something wasn't right. I couldn't explain it. She just looked worried. The next morning, I asked if everything was okay. She looked at me, smiled softly, and said, "You worry too much." Then she kissed me goodbye and left for work. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But over the next few weeks, those late nights became more frequent. Once a week turned into twice. Twice turned into almost every other day. She always had a reasonable explanation. A coworker called in sick, an emergency surgery, too many patients. Every excuse sounded believable because they probably were. At least that's what I kept telling myself. Then little things started changing. Emma had never been protective of her phone before. She'd leave it on the kitchen counter, on the couch, even in the bathroom without thinking twice. Suddenly it never left her hand. Every notification made her glance down immediately. If I walked into the room while she was texting, she'd lock the screen before I could accidentally see it. The change was small, but once I noticed it, I couldn't stop noticing it. One Friday night, we ordered pizza and watched a comedy we'd both seen at least 5 times. Halfway through the movie, her phone vibrated. She looked down at the screen, and for just a fraction of a second, I saw something I'd never seen on her face before. Fear. Not happiness, not excitement. Fear. She immediately stood up. "I'm just going to get some fresh air," she said before stepping onto the balcony. I watched through the glass as she paced back and forth while holding the phone tightly against her ear. I couldn't hear a single word she said, but I could tell the conversation wasn't normal. She kept looking over her shoulder as if she expected someone to be watching. Nearly 10 minutes later, she came back inside, forced a smile, and sat beside me as though nothing had happened. I paused the movie. "Who was that?" I asked casually. She answered without hesitation. "My mom." The words left her mouth so naturally that I almost believed them. Almost. Then she froze, only for a second. I mean, my aunt, she corrected herself with a nervous laugh. I don't know why I said mom. My stomach tightened. Emma's mother had died 6 years earlier. She never accidentally forgot that. I didn't say anything. I simply pressed play and let the movie continue. But from that moment on, something inside me changed. I wanted to trust her. I kept telling myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Yet every late shift, every secret phone call, every nervous glance slowly built another piece of a story inside my head. A story I desperately hoped wasn't true. I had no idea that only a week later I would find something that would make every one of those doubts feel real. A week later, everything changed. Emma had an early shift at the hospital, so she rushed out of the apartment before sunrise. I was running late myself, quickly getting dressed while finishing my coffee. As I grabbed my laptop bag near the front door, I noticed her black backpack sitting beside it. She had forgotten it. That wasn't like her. Emma never forgot anything, especially not something she carried to work every single day. I picked it up, planning to drive it over to the hospital during my lunch break. The moment I lifted it, I heard something vibrating inside. At first I assumed it was her phone. Then I remembered she had texted me only 5 minutes earlier saying she'd arrived safely. That meant she already had her phone with her. Confused, I slowly unzipped the backpack. Sitting beneath a notebook and a folded sweatshirt was another smartphone. My heart skipped a beat. I stared at it for several seconds, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. Emma had never mentioned owning a second phone. She had never given me any reason to believe she even needed one. Before I could think any further, the screen lit up. A new message appeared. Same place, 8:30 tonight. Don't bring anyone. I felt every muscle in my body tense. My first thought was that there had to be an explanation. Maybe it belonged to someone from the hospital. Maybe she was helping a patient. Maybe she had simply forgotten to tell me about it. But the longer I looked at the message, the less believable those explanations became. A second notification appeared only moments later. Please don't be late this time. We don't have much time left. I swallowed hard. Those weren't the kind of messages coworkers usually sent each other. I looked toward the apartment door as if expecting Emma to suddenly walk back inside and catch me holding the phone. My hands were shaking. Part of me wanted to unlock it immediately. Another part knew that if she discovered someone had tried to access it, she'd know it was me. I carefully entered her birthday. Incorrect. Our anniversary. Incorrect. The last 4 digits of her phone number. Incorrect again. A warning immediately appeared across the screen. One more failed attempt will temporarily lock this device. I stopped. Whatever was hidden inside that phone would have to wait. I carefully placed it back exactly where I had found it, zipped the backpack closed, and set it beside the front door as though nothing had happened. The drive to work felt longer than usual. I barely heard the radio. Every traffic light seemed to last forever. Every few minutes my mind replayed the message over and over again. Same place, 8:30 tonight. Don't bring anyone. By lunchtime, I had convinced myself Emma was seeing someone else. I hated myself for thinking it, but every strange thing she'd done over the past month suddenly fit together perfectly. The late nights, the secret phone calls, the nervous expressions, the second phone. Around 1 o'clock, my own phone buzzed. It was Emma. How's your day going? I stared at the screen for almost a full minute. Normally, I would have answered with a joke or sent her a picture of something funny I'd seen at work. Instead, I simply typed, "Busy today. See you tonight." She replied almost immediately, "Love you." Those 2 words hurt more than I expected. If she was lying to me, how could she still say she loved me so easily? I spent the rest of the afternoon pretending to work while barely accomplishing anything. My coworkers asked if I was feeling okay. I blamed it on a headache. The truth was much harder to explain. By the time I finally arrived home, Emma was already there. She was sitting on the couch reading a book with Max asleep beside her. She smiled the moment I walked through the door, but now I couldn't stop wondering if every smile had become an act. "Hey," she said happily. "Long day?" I nodded. "You forgot your backpack this morning." The smile on her face disappeared for just a fraction of a second. It was so quick that most people would have missed it. I didn't. "Oh," she said quietly. "You brought it back." "Yeah." She looked directly at me. "Did anyone touch it?" My heart immediately started racing again. I forced myself to shrug. "No, I just left it by the door before going to work." She stared at me for another second, before letting out a slow breath of relief. Relief. Not surprise. Not gratitude. Relief. That single reaction told me more than any words ever could. Something inside that backpack mattered. Something she desperately didn't want me to find. That evening we ate dinner together, talked about work, laughed at one of Max's ridiculous attempts to steal food from the table, and for a moment, everything almost felt normal again. Then, at exactly 7:45, Emma stood up and grabbed the same black backpack. "I have to head back to the hospital," she said. "Another emergency?" I asked. She nodded without looking directly at me. "They're short-staffed tonight." She kissed me goodbye, smiled one last time, and walked out the apartment door. I waited until I heard her car start. Then I walked to the window and watched her drive away. I counted to 30, grabbed my keys, and made the worst decision of my life. I stayed 3 cars behind her the entire drive. At first, everything looked normal. She followed the same route she always took toward St. Mary's Hospital, but after a few minutes, she turned at an intersection she had never used before. I frowned and kept following. She drove farther away from downtown, past neighborhoods I had only seen once or twice, until the city lights slowly disappeared behind us. The streets became quieter, the buildings older. Eventually, she pulled into an industrial district filled with abandoned warehouses, empty parking lots, and rusted chain-link fences. My stomach twisted. This definitely wasn't the hospital. She parked in front of an old brick warehouse with no company sign, no logo, and almost no lights visible from the outside. It looked abandoned. Rainwater reflected the orange glow of the streetlights as she stepped out of the car carrying the black backpack. Before walking toward the entrance, she looked around carefully, scanning the empty street as if making sure nobody had followed her. I immediately leaned lower in my seat. After a few seconds, she disappeared through a gray metal side door, which quietly closed behind her. I sat there staring at the building. Every instinct told me to start my car, drive away, and pretend I had never come here. But another voice inside my head kept asking the same question. If she's not cheating, then what is she hiding? I turned off my headlights, got out of the car, and slowly crossed the street. The warehouse looked even more abandoned up close. Paint peeled from the walls. Several windows were boarded shut, while others were cracked and covered with years of dirt. There were no security cameras that I could see, no business hours, no signs that anyone worked there. Only one small light above the side entrance. As I approached the building, something caught my attention. Leaning against the wall beside the entrance were 5 children's bicycles. One of them still had pink streamers hanging from the handlebars. Another had training wheels. I stopped walking. Children's bikes. That made absolutely no sense. Why would children be inside an abandoned warehouse? Then I heard something through the door. Laughter. Quiet at first. Then more voices. Children's voices. I frowned. Nothing about this place matched the story I had created in my head. Taking a slow breath, I carefully pushed the heavy metal door open just enough to look inside. The moment the gap became wide enough to see through, I completely forgot about cheating. The warehouse wasn't abandoned at all. It had been transformed into something entirely different. Folding tables filled one side of the room. Shelves were stacked with blankets, canned food, baby formula, and children's toys. Volunteers carried boxes from one room to another, while several women quietly spoke with families sitting around plastic tables. Children laughed as they colored pictures with crayons or played with old board games scattered across the floor. The place wasn't a secret meeting spot. It was a shelter. My eyes immediately searched the room until they found Emma. She was kneeling beside a little girl, who couldn't have been older than 6 years old, helping her tie the lace on a worn pink sneaker. When she finished, the little girl threw her arms around Emma's neck in a hug so genuine it nearly broke my heart. Emma hugged her back, smiled warmly, and gently brushed the girl's hair behind her ear before standing up. I had seen Emma smile thousands of times over the years, but somehow this smile felt different. It wasn't forced. It wasn't hiding anything. It was simply real. I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to understand what I was looking at. Everything I believed over the last several weeks suddenly began falling apart. There was no secret boyfriend, no romantic affair, no hidden relationship. Instead, Emma spent her nights helping complete strangers. My chest tightened with guilt. How many terrible things had I imagined about the woman I loved? I was about to quietly leave before she noticed me when I heard a calm voice behind me. "Can I help you?" My heart nearly stopped. I turned around to see an older woman standing only a few feet away. She wore jeans, a gray sweater, and a volunteer badge clipped to her shirt. She studied my face carefully, almost as if she already knew exactly who I was. "I'm sorry," I said nervously. "I think I have the wrong place." The woman looked past me toward Emma before meeting my eyes again. Then she quietly said something I never expected to hear. "No, I think you've finally found the right one." I stared at the woman, completely speechless. She looked at me for several seconds before letting out a quiet sigh. "You're Ryan, aren't you?" she asked. My stomach tightened instantly. "How do you know my name?" She gave a small, tired smile and glanced toward Emma, who was still talking with one of the families across the room. "Because she talks about you all the time." I frowned. "She does?" "Every chance she gets." The woman's expression softened. "She says you're kind. She says you're stubborn. And she says that one day you're going to ask too many questions." I looked back toward Emma. If she trusted me that much, why didn't she tell me about this place? The woman folded her arms. "Because nobody outside this building is supposed to know it exists." "Why?" I asked quietly. She looked around the room before answering. "Most of the women here are hiding from someone. Abusive husbands, violent boyfriends, dangerous family members. Some escaped only a few hours ago. If the wrong person discovers where they are..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I slowly looked around the warehouse again. Suddenly, every detail made sense. The unmarked building, the second phone, the strange messages, the secret location. Everything had been designed to keep these people alive. I felt sick. For weeks, I had convinced myself Emma was living a double life. In reality, she had been risking her own safety to protect people she barely knew. "She never wanted you involved," the woman continued. "Not because she didn't trust you, but because she loved you." My throat tightened. If someone followed either of you here, every family in this shelter could be in danger. I lowered my head. "I followed her." The woman nodded slowly. "I figured." Before either of us could say another word, the loud crash of a metal door echoed through the warehouse. Every conversation stopped instantly. The children looked up from their toys. Volunteers froze where they stood. Emma turned toward the entrance, and the smile disappeared from her face. 2 men had just walked inside. The first looked to be in his early 40s, wearing a black leather jacket, despite the warm weather outside. His face was covered with several days of stubble, and his eyes slowly scanned every person in the room. Behind him stood a much larger man with crossed arms and a cold expression that immediately made my skin crawl. Neither of them looked lost. They looked like they knew exactly why they were there. The taller man took one slow step forward. "I'm looking for my wife," he announced loudly. His voice echoed across the warehouse. Nobody answered. "I know she's here," he continued, "and I'm not leaving without her." One of the volunteers calmly stepped forward. "Sir, this is private property. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The man smiled, but there wasn't a trace of kindness in it. Private property? He repeated. Funny, because my wife stole my daughter and disappeared 3 weeks ago. He slowly reached into his jacket. Every muscle in my body tensed. For one terrifying second, I thought he was reaching for a gun. Instead, he pulled out a small photograph and held it high enough for everyone to see. It showed a woman holding the hand of a little girl with blonde hair. Her name is Sarah, he said. Somebody here knows where she is. The warehouse remained completely silent. The man's smile faded. Fine. He looked at the larger man standing beside him. Search every room. Without saying a word, the larger man started walking deeper into the shelter. The atmosphere changed instantly. Volunteers began quietly moving children toward the back of the building. Mothers grabbed their kids without asking questions. Emma quickly stepped between the two men and the families. Her voice remained calm, but I could hear the urgency behind it. Everyone, take the children to the safe rooms. Now. The volunteers reacted immediately. It was obvious they had rehearsed this before. Hidden doors opened behind shelves. Families disappeared into hallways I hadn't even noticed when I first arrived. The older woman beside me grabbed my arm. Ryan, she whispered, whatever happens next, don't let them know you followed Emma here. Before I could ask why, the larger man suddenly stopped walking. He turned his head slowly and looked directly at me. Our eyes met from across the warehouse. His expression immediately changed. He pointed straight at me. Who the hell is that? The larger man slowly started walking toward me. Every instinct in my body screamed for me to run, but my legs refused to move. It felt as though the concrete floor beneath my feet had turned into wet cement. Emma's eyes locked onto mine, and the expression on her face told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't angry that I had followed her. She was terrified because I had unknowingly led danger straight to the people she had spent years trying to protect. Ryan, she whispered, barely loud enough for me to hear. The man in the leather jacket looked back and forth between us before a slow smile spread across his face. It wasn't the smile of someone who had just solved a mystery. It was the smile of someone who had just found an advantage. So, he said calmly, you're the boyfriend? Nobody answered. Emma slowly stepped in front of me, placing herself between us without even thinking. He has nothing to do with this, she said firmly. He doesn't even know why this place exists. The man chuckled quietly. Maybe not. He took another step closer. But he does now. His partner stopped only a few feet away from me. He was easily 6'4" and built like someone who had spent years lifting heavy things for a living. He looked at me for several long seconds before speaking. Did you follow her here? I hesitated, knowing that every answer could make things worse. Finally, I nodded. Yes. Did she tell you where she was going? No. Did you know this place existed? No. He continued staring at me, almost as if he were deciding whether I was telling the truth. Then, without warning, he grabbed the front of my jacket and slammed me against the brick wall beside the entrance. The impact knocked the air out of my lungs. Emma immediately rushed toward us, but 2 volunteers held her back. Stop! She shouted. He doesn't know anything. The man ignored her. His face was only inches from mine. I could smell cigarette smoke on his clothes. Listen carefully, he said quietly. My wife disappeared 3 weeks ago. She took my daughter with her. Somebody told me this shelter has been hiding women from their families. I don't care about anyone else in this building. I only want Sarah. I looked directly into his eyes. There was anger there, but beneath it I saw something else. Desperation. I don't know who Sarah is, I answered honestly. I only found this place 20 minutes ago. He searched my face for several seconds before slowly letting go of my jacket. Across the room, Emma took a careful step forward. Sarah came here because she was afraid, she said softly. The man turned toward her immediately. Afraid of what? Emma didn't answer right away. She simply looked at him with an expression filled more with sadness than fear. Afraid of you, The warehouse became completely silent. Even the children hiding in the back rooms had stopped making noise. The only sound came from rain tapping gently against the metal roof overhead. The man's jaw tightened. She lied. Emma slowly shook her head. No. You don't know our marriage. No, Emma replied quietly. But I saw the bruises on her arms. Nobody moved. I saw the broken ribs on her medical report. His breathing became heavier. I stayed with her while she cried because she thought you were going to find her. The larger man looked toward his partner but said nothing. Emma continued speaking, her voice never rising above a calm whisper. She didn't run because she stopped loving you. She ran because she believed one more night in that house would be her last. The man's shoulders slowly dropped. For the first time since entering the warehouse, he looked less angry and more broken. He looked down at the floor for several seconds before quietly asking, "Is she safe?" Emma nodded once. "Yes." "Is my daughter safe?" "Yes." Tears formed in the corners of his eyes, though he quickly wiped them away before anyone could notice. At that exact moment, the distant sound of police sirens echoed through the street outside. Within seconds, blue and red lights flashed through the warehouse windows. Someone had called the police the moment the two men entered the building. The larger man immediately looked toward the entrance. "We need to go." His partner remained perfectly still for another few seconds before slowly nodding. Without another word, the two men turned around and walked back outside, just as police officers surrounded the building. Several officers stopped them before they reached the parking lot, while others entered the shelter to make sure everyone inside was safe. Nearly an hour later, the warehouse had become quiet again. Volunteers comforted frightened families, while officers finished taking statements. I found Emma sitting alone on the concrete steps outside the building. She stared silently at the wet pavement as rain continued falling under the glow of the streetlights. I slowly sat beside her. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, I broke the silence. "I'm sorry." She looked at me and smiled sadly. "I know." I lowered my eyes. "For weeks I convinced myself you were cheating on me. Every late shift, every phone call, every excuse. I created an entire story in my head instead of simply trusting the person I loved." Emma reached over and gently took my hand. "I wanted to tell you," she whispered. "More times than you could imagine." "Then why didn't you?" She looked back toward the warehouse where children were beginning to laugh again, as if the nightmare had already passed. "Because every person inside that building trusted me with their lives. If even one secret escaped these walls, someone could lose everything." I nodded slowly. For the first time, I truly understood the weight she had been carrying alone. We sat there together until the rain finally stopped. 1 year has passed since that night. Emma and I are married now, and every Saturday morning we return to that same old brick warehouse together. Most people drive past it without ever giving it a second glance. They see another abandoned building slowly disappearing into the city. I see the place that taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. Trust isn't about having every answer. Sometimes trusting someone means believing in their heart, even when you don't understand their silence. And every time I watch Emma smile at another frightened child walking through those old doors for the very first time, I remember how close I came to losing the best person I have ever known, simply because I believed the story inside my own head instead of asking her to tell me the truth.